name's going everywhere.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Hold on a minute.
You're destroying.
Hey, hold on a minute. Yo, Detroit, what? Detroit, what?
We've gone over Eminem's past a number of times here on this channel, so in this video, we're going to dive much deeper, taking a look at his lineage, his parents' traveling band, and all the intricate details of the true come-up of Marshall Mathers III.
What was your mom doing at the time?
She wasn't working. I mean, going to bingo a lot.
Went to bingo a lot.
We've scoured the internet to find facts about how his mom met his father, the mental illnesses in his family, his uncle Ronnie's impact on his youth, and then his suicide, M's high school bully DeAngelo Bailey, the formation of D12 and his mentorship from Proof, the failure of his first album Infinite, his own failed suicide attempt, and so much more. If you are a diehard fan of Eminem or you just saw him perform at the Super Bowl and you want to find out more, this is not a video you want to miss out on. Leave a goat emoji in the comments down below. Now let's get into the true before they were famous for the one and only Eminem. While the name Eminem in recent years has replaced automobiles as Detroit's most famous export, even some of Eminem's biggest fans forget that he wasn't actually born in the Motor City.
Cause I live at home in the trailer. Mom, I'm coming home to you.
It turns out he actually has deep roots in America's rural Midwest, made up of English, Scottish, German, and Swiss ancestry. Marshall's grandmother, Betty Cresson, was born in Highland, Kansas. Her mother left her father, taking 9-month-old Betty to live with her alcoholic grandmother in St. Joseph, Missouri. St. Joseph is a small working-class town located 1 hour away from Kansas City. While it had gone down in history as the death location of legendary outlaw Jesse James, it would be soon known as the birth location of Marshall Mathers III. It was here Betty spent her formative years, getting married to a man named Nelson at just 14 years old on January 5th, 1955. Betty gave birth to Debbie Nelson, the first of several kids. I don't know, the 50s were just a different time. The two played in a band together called the Daddy Warbucks, touring alongside Marshall's home state of North Dakota as well as Montana. The couple eloped in 1972. Not long after, pregnant Debbie relocated back to St. Joseph, and on October 17th, 1972, her son, Marshall Bruce Mathers III, was born. Debbie states that when he was born, she was determined to provide for her son, giving him the life that she never had. In an interview, she claimed, "I made a promise with God. The alcohol, the drugs, the drinking, the pot, any of that stuff, they would never go through that. The fighting, none of that." The family moved to North Dakota, shacking up in Marshall Sr.'s parents' basement and taking up work at a local motel that his father owned. This is when things started falling apart. Many family members close to Debbie claimed that her husband was highly abusive, who would even like to throw knives at people's feet to see how close he could come without hitting you. With the abuse being too much to bear, she took Marshall and headed back to St. Joe, making the first of many moves that he would experience throughout his youth.
So you had to change schools every couple months?
Yeah, I would change schools 2-3 times a year, and that was probably the roughest part.
Marshall was introduced to music pretty much out of the womb. Debbie, being a fan of rock, took him to see Talking Heads as a toddler. As you could imagine, young Marshall was left curious about his father's whereabouts. As a little boy, he would draw pictures and give them to his grandma, asking if she could send them to him. Betty did her best, reaching out to the Marshall's family for anyone who was in touch with Marshall Sr., and as it turned out, he had taken to California. As he got older and learned to write, Eminem sent his dad letters, only to find them labeled as return to sender. To this day, he still has never met Marshall Sr. Eventually, he gave up.
I never knew him, so...
You never met him since?
Never met him, never knew him.
Do you want to, or...?
I don't know. Some people ask me that. I don't think I do. If my kids moved to the edge of the earth, I'd find them.
Marshall exhibited strange behavior as a boy. Family members claimed that he constantly would rock back and forth whenever he heard music. It got so intense that he had to be put on Ritalin. One teacher at his elementary school told Debbie that her boy was retarded. M spent much of his childhood bouncing back and forth from Missouri to Michigan, switching school on average every 2 to 3 months. He at one point lived in the small Missouri town of Savannah. The length of time, however, is unspecified. Now, we did find an article written in a St. Joe's newspaper where a man named Ann Lee Stanley suggested M and Debbie lived in the Cedar Tree apartments in Savannah. He went on to tell a story where the rapper, now at the height of his career, showed up to Miller's General Store by Highway 71, where Andy worked as a cashier. He claims that M walked in with 2 bodyguards and asked him where the old middle school was. He then gave Andy a signed photo that read, "Andy, nice meeting ya. Appreciate the love, homie." Now, due to his impoverished Midwest roots, in addition to his character in 8 Mile, many have come to believe that Eminem grew up in a trailer park. This is a misconception. However, he lived in many different types of homes. Eminem would grow up alongside his grandmother's son, Ronnie, who was only 3 years younger than him.
Yeah, my uncle Ronnie started liking rap before I did, and then he
kind of introduced me to it.
His uncle Todd Nelson would also be present in his life, although M has admitted the two were not that close. Eminem has opened up about his family's love for firearms. Eminem shared a story when Todd took him to a Missouri firing age at just 11 years old to shoot AK-47s. Mental illness ran in Eminem's family, and mixing the illness with guns is definitely not pleasant. Todd would unfortunately commit suicide at the age of 43 after shooting himself in the head. It was Marshall's birthday. His uncle Ronnie also exhibited several signs of instability. According to Marshall, Ronnie burnt his grandmother's house down at 7 years old and also killed a hamster after throwing it in the microwave. Jesus Christ. But due to their short age gap, Ronnie and Marshall were pretty close. They were both children and from broken homes, surrounded by absolute craziness. With all the moving that Marshall did, Ronnie was one of the consistent friends that he had throughout his childhood. Ronnie was a music lover who would often make himself mixtapes. It was through his uncle's love of music that he was introduced to a little thing called hip-hop. Ronnie brought over his Breakin' soundtrack, which featured Reckless by Ice-T.
The first time I heard anything, my Uncle Ronnie brought over a tape of the Breakin' soundtrack, and it had Reckless on it from Ice-T.
Marshall was introduced to a whole new world. Immersing himself in hip-hop culture, he and Ronnie would even go to the park with a piece of cardboard and breakdance. Well, at least I would try to. I don't know, that'd be quite a sight today to see Eminem trying the breakdance. Marshall also showed an interest in rhyming words, often busting into Debbie's room late at night to ask if one particular word rhymed with another. Rappers would express themselves and how they felt through lyrics, something young Marshall respected. Eminem had his own way of expression. However, as a lonely kid, he would often draw comic book characters. Professionals have suggested this was a way for him to feel powerful in an environment where he was anything but. Eminem has claimed to be a victim of abuse at the hands of his mom, Debbie. Because he attended several different schools, he was also the victim of bullying. One such bully was DeAngelo Bailey, who had been immortalized in the song Brain Damage. While attending Dort Elementary School in Roseville, Michigan, Debbie would pick him up from school. One afternoon, he did not come out from the building. After two kids told her he was in the bathroom, she ventured inside to find him laying in a pool of his own blood.
Marshall was bullied in school, however, notably by a boy called DeAngelo Bailey, who attacked him in his school bathroom, resulting in him being in a coma for 10 days.
He was bludgeoned with a snowball packed with a hard object. Debbie rushed her son to the hospital, and in the span of just 4 days, he apparently saw over 21 doctors, all of who would say that he would never be the same. And as it turns out, he suffered a cerebral concussion which would alter his brain. According to Marshall, when he woke up, the first thing that he said was, "I can spell elephant." Debbie had to teach Marshall to speak once again, as well as dress himself and tie his own shoelaces. She ended up suing the school district after her medical bills came to $150,000. It was incidents like this that affected him heavily as a young boy. Settling in the Detroit area in his teens, Marshall found himself the odd man out. One of the few white kids at a predominantly African-American school, he was often the subject of bullying. In order to fit in, the naive kid would rock an African medallion out in public. As you can imagine, the reception wasn't too great, anger was piling up on the inside, and he was a little too old for the escapism of comics and superheroes. He actually talks about this song on Yellow Brick Road. In 1986, a new record was released on the scene, something that caught 14-year-old Marshall, a record from an unusual trio out of Brooklyn who rapped about brass monkeys and how you just had to fight for your right to party. The record in question was Licensed to Ill, and that funny-looking rap group was the Beastie Boys. This wowed the young Midwest drifter who, at the time, was only used to seeing black artists dominate that art form. Something clicked in his head, and from there, he just knew he wanted to rap. Speaking on the Beastie Boys, it was them being themselves that helped me figure out how to relax and be me. Made me feel like I could get up there and rock the mic and rock millions. Marshall became a student of the genre, studying the lyrics of not just the Beastie Boys, but Rakim and Masta Ace. He eventually dropped out of Lincoln High School after repeating 9th grade 3 times, although he would later go back. Around this time, Debbie would also give birth to his younger half-brother Nathan. The first time that he got up was at a club called the Rhythm Kitchen. His future manager Paul Rosenberg posted a flyer from that very venue on his blog. Going by his initials Eminem, the rapper wasn't able to let out a sentence before the audience began booing. While his first time did not work out, kept at it, studying the dictionary and developing a unique rhyming skill few had seen. That's right, Eminem carried a dictionary around with him in case he wanted to know a new word, and I don't know, if you want to be an elite rapper, kids, carry a dictionary.
I want to be able to have all these words at my disposal in my vocabulary at all times, whenever I need to pull them out.
Eventually, he got so good at this that his friend, Deshaun Holton, aka Proof, would sneak him into cafeterias at Osborne High School in Detroit. There, he would make Eminem battle other aspiring rappers while betting money on the white boy. Eminem would tear them apart, and since nearly everybody would bet against him, Proof made a pretty penny. The two would split the winnings when he was done. The two would often pull stunts like this, and in fact, Marshall was often known for his goofiness. This is almost like White Men Can't Jump, but like the rap version. This is crazy. During this time, another love came into his life. In the late 80s, his mom Debbie housed foster kids for the state of Michigan. One of these young girls was 13-year-old Kimberly Scott. Her and Marshall hit it off over time, with Debbie finding them fooling around in his bedroom. The two soon became an item. Because Debbie treated Kim like her own daughter, she did not approve of Marshall having a relationship with her. She eventually booted the two from her home, and the couple stayed at the home of Marshall's friend Bob. M continued his quest to become a professional rapper, playing with a group called New Jacks and later Basement Productions alongside Proof and another rapper called Mannix, who would also go on the battle at Detroit's St. Andrew Hall. In the venue's basement, this place was known as The Shelter. It was here that the MC would begin to make a name for himself as a vicious spitter. It was also depicted heavily in the film 8 Mile. Marshall's family's life was falling into turmoil. Debbie had developed an addiction to prescription pills and remained a looming presence in his life. But something else would soon happen. Marshall's uncle Ronnie died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head at just 17 years old. Suffering from depression, he had committed suicide. It truly was a heavy loss for the young Marshall. His childhood friend who had helped open his eyes to the world of hip-hop had killed himself, and the remainder of his family's history of both mental illness and violence made it much more devastating. Too distraught to attend Ronnie's funeral, Grandma Betty sent him a video. In the early 90s, Basement Productions would change its name to Soul Intent and recorded an album called Crackers and Cheese. This would attract the attention of the Bass brothers of FBT Productions. His relationship with Kim was rocky. Half the time, Marshall was living with Proof and several other rappers in a house on 8 Mile and Navarro Street on the east side of Detroit. They would grind tirelessly, recording music while supporting themselves with a job at Little Caesars Pizza. When M would go and visit Kim, he would venture through the rough neighborhoods. There is a rumor that M was once shot on his way to her house, but we do believe this was misreported. But he apparently was shot at, but not as bad, but still. M would also take up work at Gilbert's Lodge in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. Due to his schedule with music, he would constantly ask for time off. Rumors were that Eminem was a decent short order cook, with his favorite food to make for himself being fajitas. He would often befriend the restaurant's customers. Some of them liked him so much that they would drive all the way into Big Bad Detroit to attend his gigs. An associate by the name of Maurice Malone would also open up a venue known as the Hip Hop Shop on 7 Mile Road. There, some of Detroit's heaviest rap battles would go down. The goal for many rap battle participants was eventually to end up competing in the Rap Olympics or Scribble Jam, an annual hip hop festival in Cincinnati, which was dubbed the biggest music event outside of Woodstock, and it was a pretty big deal at the time. Eminem, however, had his eyes on a hit record. It was at this time when he would meet local Detroit MCs, con artists, Bizarre, Kaniva, Bugs, and Swift. They quickly became his associates. Eminem's drive for success in the Detroit music scene gave him a chip on his shoulder. No matter how many battles he competed in, no matter how many ciphers he slayed, people were doubting the white boy from Missouri every chance that they got. Growing frustrated with his reality, he wanted to sink his teeth into anybody that he could. Hanging around the Roseville Music Shop record time, M would even battle a young Kid Rock at his in-store signing. The pressure built in 1995 when Kim gave birth to his daughter Haley Jade Mathers. With a daughter and a low-paying restaurant job, it was a do-or-die situation for Marshall Mathers. He needed a hit album that the mainstream market would enjoy.
Alright, here he is! No longer Detroit's dirty little secret, Eminem!
Signed to FBT Productions, the Bass Brothers alongside with Kaniva helped produce a 10-track album called Infinite. Along the album's title track, Eminem's debut included upbeat radio-friendly hits like Tonight, Searchin', It's Okay, and Never Too Far. With creative, fun, catchy tunes from a unique voice like M's, there was no way this album would be nothing less than a smash, and Infinite sold 1,000 copies.
What?
Music critics call the Infinite album an ill-fated attempt to replicate the sounds of MCs like Nas and AZ, both of whom had happened to be influences of Marshall's. Infinite was like a bomb of Hiroshima-like proportions, and Eminem was a failure. His album had flopped, his peers in the music scene did not accept him, and on top of that, his relationship with Kim was falling apart. Moving back in with his mother, he would begin consuming pills from her stash. In 1997, he was fired from Gilbert's Lodge, and one night, while down on his luck, he decided to try and end it. Marshall survived the suicide attempt, but lost his drive to continue hip-hop. That was his life. His father had abandoned him, his family members had committed suicide, he had been robbed, beaten, and abused by everyone from kids at school to his own mother, and now his music career had failed, but he was convinced to give it one last try and embrace the darker side of his artistry. Something that could harness the pain and turmoil that he had experienced his entire life and make something out of it. He took the advice from there, and he developed an alter ego known as Slim Shady. With the personality of Shady, he began writing the craziest, most sadistic, and often offensive lyrics as possible. In 1997, the Slim Shady EP was released. The record's first track, Low Down Dirty, showcased the dramatic shift in content. The overall reception of the EP was was positive, with most critics noting his change. The pieces began falling together. Eminem and Bizarre would travel to Jersey, where they made connections with the Outsiders, a hip-hop collective comprised of spitters from the East Coast. Eminem would take the stage with the crew to open for Wu-Tang in Staten Island, who would also begin to work with Proof and his homies, forming the Detroit rap group D12. With the power of the Slim Shady EP backing him, as well as his group mates, M continued rocking shows, eventually ended up at none other than Scribble Jam. It was here that he battled his way up the ladder, making it to the finals versus Juice. M ended up in second place. After losing, a guy approached. Oppressed by his raw aggression, he asked if M had a tape that he could see, and he gave him a copy of the Slim Shady EP. Discouraged, the rapper returned to Detroit, and soon after, he received word that the person that he gave his album to was an employee for Interscope Records, and forwarded his music to Mr. Jimmy Iovine, who played a sample for Dr. Dre. When M met with Dr. Dre, he was not exactly expecting a white boy, and M, having no money to his name, was dressed in an all-yellow jumpsuit. Regardless, the two clicked, and M was ready to change the world as we know it. They actually recorded My Name Is right in that first meeting. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the complete family history of Mr. Marshall Mathers. Let us know if you learned anything new about Eminem in the comments down below. My name is Clyde Smith, and I'll see you guys in another video.